hit go live again. It says starting.
Cool. It should convert. That go live button should go away and it should turn into a comments section.
Yeah, it says in live video. We are live now, and it says we've been going for 2 minutes. So
There we
they may
have
have
it.
gotten some of
So
that initial setup stuff.
yeah, you may have heard today's guest.
More than you wanted to
Barton.
hear.
Yeah. So Carl, why don't you kick us off today? I feel like I always get the honors of doing that.
Well, Bryce, thank you very much, especially since I get to actually drive today. So while I am introducing Brad, why don't you share all this on all the other pages that we have, the plethora of pages that GallantFew covers out in the Facebook world. So in the meantime, it's my privilege to welcome Brad Barton today to GallantFew's Leader Chat, version 8,724 since the crisis began. That's what it seems like. Last week we kept saying that we needed to play the theme song from Groundhog Day every time Bill Murray's alarm clock goes off and Sonny and Cher start singing. We should play that same song, but then copyright, Facebook would throw us off and it would just be a big mess. So anyway, I got to meet Brad Barton first a month and a week ago. It seems like it was a lot longer than just like 5 weeks. It was just like 5 weeks ago. And Brad and his wife, Melissa, came all the way from Utah and led a marriage retreat, a couples retreat that the Raider Project hosted in Surf City, North Carolina. And Brad is a world-class runner. He's and I'll mess this up because I want to say All-American. Is that right? When you were in college, you were an NCAA All-American. And then are you currently world record holder for the mile or has somebody beat you out of that recently?
Which mile world record are you talking
Anyone,
about?
pick
one. Yeah. There we go.
That was pretty good.
I have never, did I cue that up for you just right or what?
He did, man. He just keyed that up.
That's actually, Coach and I have 4 world records and 2 of them are mile records. And one of those mile records has been retired. John Troutman, a 5,000 meter Olympian back in the day. We were contemporaries in the NCAA together, both trying to make the team in 1992. And for Barcelona games, he made it and I didn't. And so he came back years later and dropped 80 pounds and got really fit and broke my record.
Wow.
So next time you see him, you just want to trip him?
Well, I hadn't seen him since he'd done it. And we were at the Music City Distance Carnival last May, and he watched me break the M50 mile world record, which we might get to as well. And he gave me a hug. So
that's awesome. Well, yeah. So one of the reasons that we asked you to come on the show today is number one, you're just an awesome guy, and we
say it again.
Awesome guy. We spend a lot of time, sometimes talking more on the negative's not the right term, but more serious topics. And not to say that you're not a serious topic, because I'm just messing this up. Like, how many mistakes have I made already so far, Bryce? So you keep it. So, but entertaining wise, right? So you have a story that's absolutely amazing. It's motivating. You have some mad magician skills. I mean, I thought it would be fun to put you in front of our audience, and that audience might be well, I know my wife is watching because she just messaged and said she's around the corner in her other office in one of our spare bedrooms here, and she did not prepare herself to be broadcast on TV today, so she is not going to make an appearance. But we may have thousands, we may have multitudes, we may have throngs that end up watching. And Bryce thought I said thong because usually that's what he's wearing when he's working. But anyway, I'll stop talking. And what we want to do, we want to pass this off, right? So Bryce, if you have any questions as Brad's going through kind of doing his talk, let's jump in and let's just kick it off. So Brad, I'll just flip it right over to you.
Brad.
Tell Carl to stop talking.
I think Bryce is monitoring the feed as well, the discussion feed, and I just found out that my wife is sharing this to my Facebook page as well.
Awesome.
So Bryce is monitoring the feed. If there's comments, if there's questions, yeah, that might be find some that are appropriate to toss in. So
Yep,
I
yeah,
invite
I'll be
you.
monitoring those. I'll find an appropriate time to cover things. We
Okay.
might have an alibi section at the end to kind of address some other things. But yeah, looking forward to it.
So I acknowledge just the multitude of different situations that you're in, those that are joining us. Some are stuck at home and you're taking a little break from work. Some of you don't have any work anymore. I'm a professional speaker, have been a full-time professional speaker for 20 years. And as you can imagine, getting in front of large groups of people and speaking for fee isn't happening right now. So I'm one of the unemployed right now, gig economy unemployed. So yeah, it's very interesting times. It's crazy times. I was in Costco the other day and an old Beatles song came to my mind. Nobody told me there'd be days like these, right? Strange days indeed. So here we are, and I think that the principles that we live by are even more relevant and important today than they ever have been. And we need the need to get back to what we really are about in our core is as important now as ever. And maybe just an idea or two that I can share with you with some stories, and then maybe some magic as well. I'll start maybe with a story about a little girl that was on her grandfather's lap as he was reading her goodnight story. And from time to time, she'd take her eyes off this colorful storybook and reach up and lovingly touch Grandpa's very, very wrinkled face. And by, she's touching her own smooth face and then Grandpa's wrinkled. Finally, she stops him and asks, "Grandpa, did God make you?" And Grandpa says, "Well, yes, honey, God made me a long, long time ago." "Oh," she said. "Well, Grandpa, did God make you too? Or did God make me too?" "Oh, yes, honey, God made you just a little while ago." "Oh," she said. Then she touched their respective faces one more time. She says, "Grandpa, God's getting better at it now, isn't he?" I believe.
Nice.
I believe there's some wisdom in that story for us as we're stuck at home, as we're working crazy hours. And it's an interesting situation that we're in, that part of our workforce are working way too hard, right? And part of us, trying to figure out what to do, right? And I think in either case, one of the things that we can do is to make a conscious effort to do that, to get better. So as you're experiencing this, and I'm really grateful that those of you that have joined us, let's make a conscious effort every day to do something, whether it be a devotional in the morning so we can get, tune more into our God, or maybe some meditation so we can get tuned into more of whatever that wonderful feeling, that feeling of grace, as I call it, is. Are you growing intellectually? Are you growing in your skill sets with your profession? Are you being a little kinder? What are you doing every day to get better? And that's maybe a jumping off spot for some of the stories that I have.
This is also a really good time, if you're not really sure where you want to go, to start thinking about where that might be, right? So everybody has extra time now, even if it's just you don't have the hour-long commute that you used to have.
Yeah.
Now you have an extra hour during the day. So when you're looking at making yourself better, I absolutely love that. But there are also some people out there may not be happy with where they are right now. This gives them a great chance. The devotion's a great way to do that. Thinking about where do you want to be a year, 5 years, 10 years from now? Because as you know from what you're going to tell us, you can't say, tomorrow I'm going to go break the world record for the mile, right? There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes into it. But you have to have a picture of what that looks like before you can ever really start moving that direction.
Touche. One of my acquaintances said, when we were talking about breaking world records, she said, "You just really need to be positive, don't you, to do something like that?" And yeah, that's a really big part of it. Plus, it takes about 7 years of suffering and doing 1,000 very difficult things. So yeah, there's a lot there. Let me. It's okay. I'm going to try some magic. I love using magic when I'm teaching, and so let's do some magic. I hope this comes through. Okay, can you see that I've got a $1 bill here, and it's much more fun to pull it out of someone's pocket and actually do the illusion with their money. But if someone can figure out how to give me one of their virtual
you can't
dollars.
have one of my Corona dollars. Sorry.
There you go. There you go. Let me tell you what I believe about us as human beings. I believe that we are infinitely valuable. And if you're having trouble getting your mind around the concept, it's because you're listening. Infinity is really tough to get our minds around. It's really hard to do. I mean, it's impossible. I believe that there literally is no end to the value that you and I possess, that we are. Now, having said that, you don't have to believe that, but understand Brad Barton believes that we are infinitely valuable. Now, having said that, do you and I bring a certain fixed, finite amount of value to our world, to ourselves, to our family, to our community? Yeah, the answer is yes. And every time we make a decision, we're doing one of three things. We're either creating more value in our environment, we're creating less value, or a little bit of both, right? Yeah. But we have a certain amount of fixed value of that infinite that we bring to our environment. So, for instance, when we tell a lie, are we creating more value or less value? When we choose honesty, when we choose to give into laziness, less value. When we choose to give into love, right? More value. Hate, less value. You get the point. Yes. We are constantly creating more value or less value. And so one benefit of getting better with our skill sets, with our passion, with our living our principles and living our calling. I'll hopefully talk about that a little bit more as well. We are tapping more into that value and the amount of value that we bring. Let's say it's represented by this $1 bill. Okay, so here's the amount of value that Brad Barton is currently bringing the world. Would it be possible to bring more of that value? So what do you think, Bryce? We're going to take a $1 bill and turn it into a
$1,000 bill.
Oh,
no, $100 bill.
Okay, maybe let's try a 100 because 1,000s are not part of the U.S.
Yeah, I know. I was kidding.
So this is the most, right? So I love the idea that we're going to go for the most we can.
Remember, he said he's not getting paid right now.
Well, maybe we're about to. Let's try this. Okay, so there was a time, this is an important principle. There was a time in my life I did not know how to do this trick. And then in the basement of the Grand America Hotel, the nicest hotel in Salt Lake City, Utah, after a keynote presentation, I was in the basement of this parking structure, and a man named Mike Cottom, a friend of mine, taught me how to do this. Let's call it a skill set. He taught me this skill set. He basically said, lots of ways to fold a bill, Brad. Okay, there's lots of decisions you and I can make, but there's one way that I know of, he said, to turn it from a $1 bill into something way more better. So that's what we're attempting to do right here. So notice there's nothing in my palms, right? Nothing in my sleeves. Let's keep my sleeves clear. And then I take the dollar bill and fold it from left to right. There's a green side and a tan side to every dollar bill. Fold it from left to right towards the computer screen, in this case, or the audience. I fold another time the same direction from left to right towards the audience. The third move is from the bottom up towards the magician, right? And then the last fold is from the bottom up towards the audience. And then a little bit of friction, a little bit of pressure, and then this $1 bill has just been magically transformed, and everything is in your screen. It's from a $1 bill into a $100 bill, and everything is examinable. And that
you saw it here, ladies and gentlemen. Brad Barton, greatest magician ever.
Crowd goes wild. Okay.
That is awesome.
Send your donations to Brad. He's going to turn them into $100 bills, and then he's going to forward them on.
Back to the GallantFew. That's right. So is this thing possible in life?
Yes.
Can you and I make decisions to get better so that we can equip ourselves to go bring more of that infinite value to our environment? And the answer is yes. I listened to an incredible story one night in a beautiful Surfside residence just a few weeks ago, where Carl talked about the value that he was inspired to bring, this calling. He was called to do this. And it wasn't a call like we woke up one morning and said, oh, I'm going to create this. It was a calling to do one thing and then a calling to do another, to help this vet and to help that struggling veteran. And a little by little, just by answering his call, he's enlisted so many other people. It became not just a passion, but it became a whole movement. And now this thing is gone all over the country and has served many people. And not only vets, but and active folks and people that are families of those. So what is your calling? What are you doing to get better? And I toss that out for your consideration. What are you feeling called to do to get better? If you have the courage to answer your call to do that little thing, and then do one more little thing, and then one more little thing. And like Carl, you turn around one day and you realize that you're working a full-time job, and then you're also, spending 20, 30 hours, 40 hours a week in the evenings and the weekends helping people, and you just know you're supposed to do it and not know how. See, when you answer your call, it doesn't have to make sense, does it? You don't have to, it doesn't have to be something you've worked the ending from the beginning. You don't have to know the details and how it's all gonna work. It's the notion of answering your call, one call by the next, and then who knows where that leads.
Yeah. How does, the call, that's, I think for a lot of people, identifying that call sometimes can be a challenge, and rightly so, because it is, in my opinion, it is clouded by a calling to retire per se, and more of a not really do anything anymore. I think this is a direction that people are striving. I work so I can retire, so I can then relax, and work in this direction, or I can do my calling. I can start interacting with the people or the things that I want to do. What's a good way? Where's the start to that finding your calling, in your opinion, I should say?
For me, when I'm anxiously engaged in some good cause, when I'm on the grow, when I have said that first you form habits, and then those habits form you, right? When I'm on the grow, and I've got habits that are helping me to, I'm reading regularly, and I'm making phone calls to people that I love, right? And realizing that it's not about me. This is not about me. My life is not about me. When I'm doing that, then the call will show up. That's been my experience. It's super easy to get sucked into one's own experience. But when we give ourselves away, I've heard, I think it was Benjamin Franklin said that doing nothing for others is the undoing of ourselves. Speaking of Benjamin Franklin. So part of answering your call is realizing that this is not about us. It's about me getting better so that I can go do some good. And the pursuit of happiness, living after the manner of happiness. There's some of my sacred literature, sacred scripture that I believe in, uses the term, and we lived after the manner of happiness. After this wonderful story about sacrifice and about doing hard things, this prophet writing this says, and we lived after the manner of happiness. And I just thought, wow, that is what it means. That this pursuit of happiness isn't working hard so that I can go relax. It's working hard so that I can do, so I can stay on mission, so that I can figure out how to go serve some more. Those that don't do that, those that start looking inwards, that's really the end of your happiness. You might get more pleasure out of that, but it's not the happiness.
Right.
I've heard it said, a coach once taught me that the hard way is the easy way, and the easy way is the hard way. And that's almost true, always true in just about every single aspect of life. It's easy to have a wonderful marriage. It's not so hard to create the environment to have that wonderful marriage and to swallow my selfish interests and go and serve every day, right?
Yes.
It's really, really easy to have lots of money. It's pretty tough to go set yourself into a disciplined system that creates that kind of wealth, right? That's hard. But if we give, it's easy to play video games, right, all day. It's hard to go to bed at night after you've just experienced, a nothing day like that. Yeah. And I'm not dissing on video games per se, but I'm talking about balance, right? So think about the hard way is the easy way. The easy way is the hard way. It's almost always true.
There's a saying in the military too that goes slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Oh. Right. So it kind of ties into that. And if you think about, if you try to do something in a hurry, you're going to mess it up. Then you have to redo it. You're probably going to mess it up and you have to redo it. And if you'd have just started from the beginning, methodically working your way through it in a smooth fashion, you get to the end quicker than if you're fumbling all over the place and having to restart and doing it wrong and all that, especially when you're in a tense environment. If you can remember slow is smooth and smooth is fast, then it can allow you to do whatever it is that you need to do in that situation. I want to come back to the calling thing a minute ago too, because it struck me that if you're having trouble identifying what your calling is, if the same thing keeps repeatedly appearing in front of you, like with me, veterans kept appearing in front of me that I was able to provide some assistance and guidance to. And I enjoyed doing that. So, and then more would come, and then more would come. Maybe you're a person that a lot of stray animals come around, or maybe you're a person that kids like to engage with and play games with. But if you just kind of pay attention to what's going on around you, there are probably instances of these calls that you're just not picking up on. Yeah, and when you start looking for them, then you start to realize, hey, I like to do this. I'm good at this. I feel called to do it.
Yeah. What was the thing you were saying about? It was about forming habits and then forming yourself. What was that again? Because that was really powerful to me.
First, you form habits, and then they form you.
Okay. Yeah, because that's so powerful. Going back to what Carl just said about, forming your habits and forming what's in your wheelhouse. It will help you identify what you can truly take on and what you truly want to take on. And this, I speak specifically in the veteran peer support realm. So many people time and time again talk about their desire to want to help other veterans, to want to connect with them, but it's not aligned with their habits. Or they're trying to do things outside of their habits, when if they just spent the time and thought, what could I do that's within what I'm currently doing right now? And when we help them to slow down, and goes back to, I think every kind of community has this particular saying, or the construction saying is measure twice, cut once. It's that slowing down, making sure that the hard way is the meticulous, the slow, the prepared way. The easy way is the we're just going to do it kind of thing.
The folksy wisdom I got from my brother-in-law on the ranch growing up on the Keystone near Salmon, Idaho, said, take the time that it takes so that it'll take less time.
That's it. That is it.
So that is one of the silver linings, I think, that will come out of this, in some families, tragedy. Certainly a collective economic disaster, right? here we are forced to slow down, and maybe some of that noise of just being so busy in my own, was stuck in my own head with my own blinders on, focused on mission. I find myself last night making up an extra batch of, the night before that last, making up an extra couple of loaves of my sourdough bread. I've got a new hobby.
There
was at
you
my
go.
sister's house a couple of months ago, and she
You got a
served this
starter?
sourdough bread, and I was hooked. So I took a start home, and last night it was just a beautiful thing to go knock on a couple of doors and just said, hey, our family had an extra loaf. We sure hope I carved a little heart on the top before I put it in the
Oh, wow.
in the Dutch oven, and I said, there's a note on there on the top of that for how our family feels about your family.
That's
and,
so cool.
We got one of the families text my wife and said, she was in, she says, I'm in tears about this. She says, it feels like I just got it. And we're delivering it warm, right? Just out of the Dutch oven. She says, I felt like I just got a warm hug that I badly needed today. So, I guess I done something good, right? I answered that little call. So times that by a million of us, by 360 million of us, and good is done. I would imagine that most of us have heard stories of somebody that was about to be done, and they got a phone call from one of their war buddies maybe, and that was it. I was thinking of, you saved my life tonight because I was just done, and you called me and you just gave me a little hope. Folks, when you listen to that inner voice, I call it the Holy Spirit, right? You call it what you will, your natural knowing. Be willing to be quiet enough that you're listening to those calls, and then act on those calls. Make that phone call, deliver that sourdough bread, right?
That is so amazing. Sourdough. It's funny you mentioned that. I recently finished a book called Alone in the Wilderness. It's got by a man named Richard Prenicky. He lives in the Alaskan wilderness by himself for 25 plus years.
Wow.
And part of his daily ritual was making these sourdough biscuits and hotcakes and like the whole starter. He had one starter, and it lasted like, you had to get like 3 or 4. So I don't know what the whole thing was, but like hearing you talk about sourdough, I mean, it's more than just, it's just the bread in general is such a symbolic thing. And just the process of it. I can, using that as an example, like I can imagine my kids putting it together and watching it rise and baking it. And then just the whole process of how it's feeding my family the love and connection and everything. And then as we move to give it to another family, it's extending that love, and it's so simple, but it's so incredibly profound. We sometimes overlook it as a whole.
So let's use that as a metaphor. Happiness isn't something that we're always experiencing.
Right.
I believe that that's one of the way this mortality is set up in my spiritual belief system. There must needs be an opposition in all things, because if we didn't know the bad, then we could never understand the good, right? And so we're not always happy, and that's okay. But if you've been through a long period of unhappiness, understand that is contrary to the way we are supposed to be. We're supposed to be experiencing happiness. Mm-hmm. And so if you're there right now, maybe it's a narrow passage that you're going through. Maybe you've got some chemical challenges that you need to go find some help for. Clinical depression is part of my family. That's something that I pretty well acquainted with some of the people that I love.
It affects a lot more people than we know. Too.
Absolutely. Very capable, accomplished people as well. And having said that, one thing that I would submit to everyone, including myself, if you're experiencing less happiness versus more happiness, go figure out a way to bring some happiness to other people. and just see what happens.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if you give from your heart, you will. It's like I give one, I have two, and I give one to you. That leaves me down by one, right? Except there's this wonderful law in the universe that states what I give comes back to me with interest.
Yeah.
So that's an idea for creating more happiness. Go see if you can lift somebody else, and just see if you're not lifted as well. I believe you will.
And I think you brought up a great point, and I like the explanation that happiness is like a full belly. Sooner or later, you're gonna get hungry, and that's in our midst of intense hunger for happiness. That's when we tend to make the lesser wise decisions about how we find happiness, whether it's through drugs, alcohol, it's sex. I mean, it's the myriad of things that are at that level of I'm just looking for some relevance of happiness, whether it comes from this. And then some people think that the only way that they're going to be happy is by ending their life. And that is, to come to realize that happiness is something that needs to be consistently fed and should be fed by positive things, and can be fed very substantially by helping others. It's seeing that realization in people that's so amazing, and you desire that to sell it in a pill that you can give to everyone, to show them of, man, if you could only finally realize how happy you can be helping others. Yeah. How important that is. So
let's get better at that part. Let's get better at creating the environment for happiness. Let's create habits of living after the manner of happiness. Another way to get better, and maybe we can talk about this for a while, and that's the notion of resilience. Resilience, we used to think that people were born with resilience or they weren't. And there is probably some truth to that some people are just more naturally, they have more aptitude for resilience than other people. That's likely true. But as we've researched this notion of grit or resilience, what we're finding is that it's a muscle. Resilience is a muscle.
Yes.
That if we use it, it gets stronger. If we don't, then it gets weaker. You don't just have it or you don't. People that are resilient are people that are solving problems. And they're on the grow. They're getting better, and moving forward, doing hard things. As we do hard things, then hard things become less difficult for us. We can break off a bit more as we go. I love the wonderful quotation that the problem isn't that we have problems. The problem is that we have problems, and then we think that having those problems is a problem. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And my high school coach was trying to teach me this principle, and I wasn't quite getting it. And then I'm watching this program called, a brand new flick that was out when I was in high school, called The Princess Bride.
Oh, yes.
That dates me, but it was brand new back in the day. And remember the man in black? The man in black is the good guy, right, in this particular flick.
The Dread Pirate Roberts.
Exactly. So Wesley, the Dread Pirate Roberts, is talking to his lady love, and he says this eternal truth. He says, "Life is pain, Highness. Anyone telling you difference, trying to sell you something." And when we can get our minds around that notion, I'm thinking that's what my coach is teaching me, that life is hard. So I can turn and run away from hard things, and hard things will chase me down, and it will chew me up and spit me out.
Well,
or I can turn and face hard things and get more resilient, and hard things are going to turn and run away from me, and I can chase them down. I love this quotation by a man named M. Scott Peck in a brilliant book called The Road Less Traveled. Some of those that have joined us have read this book. If you're not, I'm definitely going to commend this book to you. If you're not in a habit of reading, don't start with this one. It's pretty tough. It's very awesome. Okay, but make this third or fourth or sixth on your list. But read the book, or listen to it, Audible account, right? The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. In this book, he says that billions daily attempt to avoid the pain of responsibility by escaping from freedom.
Say that one more time.
That's good. Let's break it down. Billions daily, he surmises. That's basically all of us, right? Everybody, everywhere, every day. Attempt, unsuccessfully, by the way, because we can't do it. Attempt to avoid the pain, because we don't like pain. We like pleasure. We attempt to avoid the pain of responsibility. And when we try to do that, we escape from freedom.
Yes.
And when we are willing to accept the pain of responsibility and go do hard things on purpose, then we become free in the process, and happy, by the way. So let's go do hard things. I was born at a very early age, and I was that
was it the Dark Ages?
From a stage, by the way. I was raised on a cattle ranch near Salmon, Idaho, 1,100-acre cattle ranch in the middle of 9 children. I believe my mom and dad had 9 kids for cheap child labor.
That's it.
They worked us pretty hard. My dad was raised in an alcoholic home by a wonderful man that just had a really ugly disease. My dad didn't drink. His drug of choice was rage. Again, a good man with a very good heart, just some really poor ways. Dad was a workaholic and a rageaholic, and when we didn't work hard enough, that the rage would come, and it was tough. Got to elementary school, I had a beaten in me that I'm lazy and that I'm worthless. So I believe those things about myself. I'm lazy and worthless. I get to elementary school, and I quickly realized that I'm not very smart. They did some testing and found out I have a learning disability called dyslexia, where you get things kind of backwards in your mind.
Yeah.
2s and 5s and E's and 3s, 9s and P's, little B's and little D's, right? I still mess that one up. Dyslexia is not something you grow out of, by the way.
Yes.
I was in 2nd grade in Mr. Berg's principal's office. We love Mr. Berg. He flew a P-38 Lightning against the Japanese in the Pacific in World War II. We love this guy. I'm in Mr. Berg's principal's office, 2nd grade. The psychologist turns to my mother and says, "Your boy is learning disabled." And I'm looking at this man thinking, "Oh, that's great. That's really great. I'm brand new and I'm already broken." What a crappy thing to tell a kid, right?
Yeah.
That's the belief that I had about myself, that I'm not smart, and backed up by tons of evidence too, because I just wasn't doing very well. I struggled through. I've got a little bit of help with the resource program and special education. Middle school, the teasing got worse. I stepped off the bus the first day. I was 4'9". I weighed 82 pounds in high school.
Wow.
Right? I'm getting beat up at home. I'm getting beat up at school. By the way, I'm doing some of the beating because I was a mean little angry bugger. I was a school failure. I didn't like myself. I was in trouble, Bryce. And that's when I decided to become an athlete. 4'0" and 82 pounds.
Yeah.
I went up for the obvious sport, which was
running.
Actually, it was. I usually get some cheesy guy from the audience here, the football team. I went over the wrestling team.
Oh, awesome!
And my wrestling coach took me under his wing. He stuck his finger in my face one night, and he says, I will make a champion. He said, champions are born and then unmade. You have been unmade, young man, but we're going to make you again into a champion. I found out years later, he stole that line from a Nike sneaker commercial. He saw on TV. But he used this notion to teach me about what I was capable of. And here's one of the wonderful truths he taught me. He said, if you want to change your story, I really hope you're listening. And I know most of you are probably multitasking, and that's great, but please tune in right here to this. The late, great George Artemis, one of the greatest coaches that ever lived, my high school wrestling coach, he said, if you want to change your story, you've got to change your stories. If you want to change your story, are there some things you'd like to see more of in your life?
Yes.
Are there some things you'd like to see less of in your life?
Most definitely.
Then that means you want to change your story. I badly wanted to change my story. And Coach taught me the power of words. He taught me that words predict, perpetuate our attitudes, our beliefs, our behaviors. And if I could change out my stories, then I could change out my attitudes and my beliefs and my behavior. He taught me the power of words. Words are powerful indeed. If those of us that are Christian, think about the first chapter of John in the New Testament. Right. There is literally, I mean, the Word, right? In the beginning was the Word. Think about this. The words are powerful things. Another book I would commend to you is a book called The Four Agreements. Don Luis McGill, I think, or McGill Luis or something like that. The Four Agreements. You can find it on Audible as well. A wonderful book. One of the four agreements is be impeccable with your word. Now, it's not just being honest. It's way deeper than that. It ties into this notion, and I'm loving this book when I get to that part because it's part of my doctrine. It's part of Coach Artemis's doctrine. Let's realize that what we say more of, we see more of. What we say more of, we see more of. And if you can just give me your full attention right here, once again, you're washing dishes, hopefully not driving right now. I want you to see what I'm doing here because I'm going to try another illusion if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to show off to you the awesome power of words. Words are not a little bit powerful. They are a lot of bit powerful. Okay, so follow along with me. Maybe if you're having trouble hearing, tune this in because you're going to listen to the power of my words. See, I have in my hand a card. On one side of the card, there is one dot. The other side, 4 dots. Once again in review, 3 on this side, 6 on that side. How many of you are confused? Raise your hand. Okay, now think about what you just saw. Did you see 1 dot on the first side? Yeah, because that's what I showed you. How about 4 dots on the next side? Yeah. That's what you saw. And then 3 dots and then 6 dots and then back to 1 dot all over again. So please help me out with this. Out loud, repeat with me. 1, 4, 3, 6. Okay, Carl, Bryce, ready?
Yep.
1, 4, 3,
6. Okay, let's try it again. 1, 4, 3, 6, and back to 1 dot all over again. Okay, raise your hand if you're still confused.
Yes.
Okay, time out. We're going to break this one down. Think about what really just happened. Because I told you a 1-word story. I did. I told you the number 1. It's a 1-word story. And then I showed you that, and our brains put it all together. That's 1 dot right there. The second time through, I said the number 3. Now, this is cosmic. Check it out. The second time through, I said the number 3, and I only said it once. So let's back up. You mean Brad Barton just told me a 1-word story 1 time? Yeah. And then we put it all together in about 200 milliseconds. 1, 2, 3. And I'm off to the next side. And you're left with a vision of seeing 3 black dots. Folks, how many dots were there really? 1 dot and then 3 dots? Or was it 1 dot and then that? And then who is it that created that 3rd black dot? A dot that's just as round, just as real as those other 2 in that split second of mental conditioning, as magicians call it. Mental conditioning. Folks, we created it with my words. I told you a story and you believed it and then you made it true. All right, so is it possible that if we can create a dot that's not there, can we create other much more important things if we focus in on the right kinds of stories? Yes. My coach told me that I could be a champion, and I believed him. And little by little, it started to get through the thaw, that frozen heart about what I thought I was capable of doing. He told me I could go to college once. I went home and told my dad. I went to school the next day. I said, "Give it up, coach." My dad said I could never go to college. We couldn't afford it. He said, "Brad Barton, you have no idea who you are, young man. See, if you work hard enough, I think you can win a state championship." You do that, they'll give you the scholarship that you need to go to college. And I worked as hard as I could, won the state championship, and they gave me a scholarship to a Division I school. Happens to be that one of the most amazing coaches in track and field history was the head coach at Weber State. And we don't have a lot of time. Carl, tell me how much. Can I tell my story real quick? Is that okay?
Yeah, I think we have plenty of time for you to tell your story. Absolutely.
Let me share. Let me do a screen share. I want you to see what this man looks like. Let's try this right there, and that should be it. Can you see my screen, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is a man. No, pardon me. That's George Artemis, my high school wrestling coach. Love this man.
Look at that ear. Look at that cauliflower ear.
What? Yeah, he was University of Colorado is where he got that cauliflower ear. By the way, the other side's worse. This man is named Chick Hislop. He's a USA Track and Field Hall of Fame coach. He when the Olympic Games last came to America, the NCAA coaches voted this man the head Olympic distance coach.
Wasn't he in Men in Black?
Maybe so. This
No Country for Old Men.
Nice. This man is a genius track and field coach, and one of the reasons is he reinvented this sport right here, this 3,000 meter steeplechase, and this is my event in college. He told me I could maybe go to the Olympic Games, and he put me on the starting line at Louisiana, New Orleans in 1992, one of the favorites to make the team, and I slipped. I slipped over the last Waterbury in the semifinal round, one of the best steeplechasers in the world. I didn't make the finals at the Olympic trials. And years later, I tried for the 1996 games in Atlanta, and I ripped something on my hip. And now I'm too old to make the Olympic team. And so I start my career professionally speaking, and I'm traveling around the world, encouraging my audiences, get better. Let's get better. And I'm thinking all the time, what have you done lately, Brad? I felt called and compelled, and there's way more here than we have time to talk about. But I felt like I was supposed to get on the track at 44 years old. And it didn't make any sense to me. I bucked it. I weaved it. I tried to say no to it, but I felt like I was supposed to get on the track. In fact, the first time I went and bought a pair of track spikes, the clerk on the other side of the counter says, "So who are you buying these for? What's his name? How old is he?" And I was sheepish. I actually apologized. Sorry, these are for me, because I just felt so out of place. I had no idea why I was doing these hard things. But I got on the track, just intensely curious. Can I break a 5-minute mile? For a 44-year-old, most of your listeners that's just a number, but think about running a mile in 5 minutes at 44 years old. Because I worked really hard for weeks and weeks, and ran a mile in 4 minutes and 43 seconds. Then I ripped my quad muscle. It took months to heal. But then months later, I was all healed up, and I felt this urge coming to me. I'm supposed to do this again. Well, I thought I got that out of myself, but I felt called to do this. And I worked even harder that year. I was 45, and I ran a mile in 4 minutes and 32 seconds. Then I ripped my quad muscle again. It took months to heal. So I called up my old retired college coach months later when I was healthy again. And I said, and those were my kiddos. That was my new calling for a while. I called my old retired college coach, Chick Hislop. He'd been retired for 4 years at that point. And I said, "Coach, I ran a mile in 4:32 last year." He said, "You did what? How old are you?" And I said, "I'm 46 now." He said, "Gads." He says, "What's the world record in the Masters age group, 45 to 49? I don't know. We looked it up. 4 minutes, 20 seconds, 0.19.
Whoa.
A guy named John Hinton, a freak of nature, at 45 years old, ran a mile in 4:20.19.
Woo.
And I'm looking at that, and that's kind of how I'm feeling, Bryce. It's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Okay, that's like 2 orders of magnitude away from 4:32. And I said, "What do you think, Coach?" He says, "Here's what I think, Brad. I think it's time to come out of retirement and go do something that's never been done." And I got chills. I said, we got to do this, coach. So we started working together and training together, and we're working hard and working hard and suffering. And after 4 months, he finally let me race. The world record's 420. I ran 426 in my debut. 2 weeks later, I ran 423. 2 weeks later, I broke my foot. Got a stress fracture.
Of course.
I'm on crutches, and I turn to my coach, and I'm hurting, not just physically. And I said, what do we do now, coach? He says, well, maybe we figured out why it's a 30-year-old world record we're trying to break. What? He says, maybe someone as old as you can't train hard enough to run any faster than 420.19. Now I got a broken heart to go with my broken foot. And then he said this, he says, or maybe I just haven't figured it out yet. Okay, here's the resiliency coming in. He says, Brad, I've been trying to train you like you were a college kid. Obviously, that's not going to work anymore. See, the environment had shifted, hadn't it? I wasn't 25 anymore. I was 26. I was 40. I was 46. The environment had shifted, and we had to reinvent what it meant to train at a world-class level. Folks, everybody listening to this, there's some version of that going on right now. There's a different environment right now. I'm working daily with some of my speaking colleagues trying to figure out how we're going to make a living in a profession that at least temporarily is gone. Okay, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So we got to reinvent this thing because it's a new environment. What are you doing to reinvent yourself? What are you doing to answer your call and do things that are really, really hard? He says, Brad, let's reinvent this. Let's take all these things that I know work over a 38-year coaching career. We'll retain the principles that still do work, and we'll reject all the ones that don't. And we'll reinvent what it means to train at a world-class level for a master's age athlete. And in 2013, after months and months of work, stepped on the track and ran 426 in an indoor mile in Pocatello, Idaho. A week later, he sent me to Boise to run 424. Guys, I ran 421.58, which is exactly to the 100th of a second, 1.5 seconds slow of the world record. I raced across the infield and called my coach. I said, Coach, I ran 421. I can do this. I know I can break the world record. I can run under 420. His response, duh. That's what I've been trying to tell you. Well, 2 weeks later at the Reggie Lewis Center in Boston, some of you know the Reggie Lewis Center, you're in the Boston area, the New Balance Grand Prix. They have a master's race to start this track and field show. I won the race, a terrible head cold. I ran 424. It's hard as I could run that.
Yeah.
I got 2 weeks later, the last chance to do this thing. Cornell, Ithaca. I'm walking across the campus that morning, and I'm so nervous. I can see my breath is in mid-December, and I walk up to this building, this historic, over 100-year-old building. This 200-meter indoor track is housed. I walk up, and I'm thinking, no way. Remember, my name is Brad Barton. The place is called Barton Hall. Little selfie right there. I walk into this place thinking, I own this track, right? This is my place. Coach and I are going to do something historic today. We're going to break a world record. And then they lined us up. They stuffed me in lane 6, 3 fellas deep. There were 18 little Ivy League punks in this race when they fired the gun. And I was desperate to get my way into the inside. The second lap, I tripped and fell, jumped up and ran as hard as I could. Separated shoulder. I ran 428.
Oof.
The brown coach had tears in his eyes, but he came up to me. He says, I'm sorry, Brad, you missed it again. He helped me to walk and get on my feet again. The Dartmouth coach on the other arm. I found a place when I could finally walk on my own. I went to the stairwell at Barton Hall, and I called my coach. And see how this isn't your story, folks, with different details. I was in despair. I was emotional. I was still physically reeling, and now all this work was for nothing. I called my coach and I said, Coach, I can't do this. It's too hard. And my coach shot back, remember what we're doing here. We're doing stuff that's never been done. And he said this, he says, if this was easy, it would have already been done. And guys, I knew he was right. And then his voice softened. He said, Brad, get back on a plane, get back to Ogden. We'll get Coach, Dr. Sharman to look at your shoulder, and I'll adjust a couple of workouts. I'm going to call the Columbia coach and get you in that last chance meet in Uptown Manhattan. Brad, let's get this done in the Armory in 2 weeks. And I'm going to try this. This is what happened 2 weeks later. This is early March 2013.
Tim Cousins, Columbia, Scott Weeks, Syracuse Chargers, Miles Schroeder, Georgetown, Brad Barton, going for the men's masters mile record of 4:20.19 against Johns Hopkins and Ben Burke from Georgetown. They're all. Watch out for lane 5. The Masters runner going for 4:20.19.
Is it buffering still?
No, they're all still
We'll put the video in the feed, but I think people can hear and they can follow along. I mean, just hearing the story, I can imagine. I can imagine how you're feeling at this moment. I mean,
63 for Brad Barton. So 4:20.19.
So I've come across 63 seconds for the first 400 meters. Then this is going to shift. Now there's 2 laps to go. I've caught everybody.
Brad Barton though making a move down third. Barton, the Masters runner, he's looking good.
Yeah, I love it. I love this. I love the shock in the announcer's voice. Like, who the heck is this guy?
342. Tim Cousins is rolling. Brad Barton is also rolling. Now in second. Tim Cousins, 4:13.60 unofficially. Saunders, Barton, unofficially new American Masters record for age group 45 to 49. He is hung. 4:15.67 for Brad Barton. New
4:15?
Actually, the official time is 4:16.83. Raced across the infield and called my coach, and I just screamed, Coach, we did it. We did it. And then we set some more goals and broke a couple of American records in the 3,000 meter steeplechase. And the next year came back and doubled my mileage and took 9.5 seconds off indoor 3,000 meters, the indoor 3,000 meter world record, 9.5 seconds. Ran just a shockingly fast time. And this was me. And let's see if I can get this to come up. Uh-oh, maybe it's gonna fail on us. Are you just seeing a blank screen there?
Just seeing a blank one.
Yeah, but give it a moment. Maybe it'll come back around.
Okay.
first section of the men's mile.
Uh-oh, let's try this right there and see if I can get this to flip to another image. This is kind of fun. So this is me breaking, Coach and I breaking some American records in this 3,000 meter steeplechase. This is me in 2017 or 2014, and I love this image. Just before they started this race, this is a neat story. Just before they started the race, the announcer, the race director, is announcing from the field. He runs up and calls the starter off, and he says, "Brad, tell me the world record that you're trying to break today." I said, "It's 9:16.10, 9:16." He's like, 9:16, okay. And the kid behind, look at the kid next to me. He's like, "What? You're here to do what? Right? I'm here to run a race. This guy's gonna try what? Right?"
I thought you were the announcer's buddy.
The next image is good too. He's like, "What the heck am I doing on this track?" Right? So the gun goes off, and I am in dead last again. Just like I always am, running pace, right? Because I'm more well coached than any of these guys. This is me just at the first lap of a 7.5 lap, 3,000 meter steeplechase race. This is me. The second lap, I'm dead last. The third lap, the fourth. This is me just past the mile mark in this race, and just off the water jump. And I got a little grin because I know I'm going to catch these kids. I'm going to break this world record. And this is actually, this next image showed up on the local, the Salt Lake City sports page. A guy named Doug Robinson, he called me in when he wrote an article, and he says, "Brad, I need an image." And I says, "Well, the one you want, isn't owned by me. It's owned by a guy named Foon Fu in Tennessee." He says, don't send it. He said, we never buy images. And I says, well, it's a pretty good one. I got some free ones I own, but I'm going to send this one anyway. He calls me back 5 minutes later. And he says, Brad, how do I get a hold of Food and Food? We want to buy this image. And this is the image that showed up on the front page of the Deseret News in Salt Lake City, Utah. I just love the look on this kid's face. I beat this little kid, youngster, by 26 seconds in the last 2.5 laps. I ran a steeplechase that day so fast that it would have won the Big Sky Conference that year.
Wow.
It would have won the WAC, the Western Athletic Conference, and the Mountain West Conference as well.
That guy's face looks like the disciples when Jesus was getting out of the boat. Like, what are you doing?
The record was submitted to the world governing body. It was rejected as a record. There was an inquiry made in the email. I love this email response. They started this email saying, please forgive us. When we programmed the computer that handles the data for the world records, we programmed it with defaults that would reject any times that are unrealistic. We have verified your performance. We've reset the defaults. Please resubmit. It will be accepted, and congratulations.
That's really funny.
Guys, Coach and I broke their damn computer.
That's pretty funny. I thought you were going to say it's like they weren't expecting to go back that far in years for your age or something.
Right.
They only had a system set up for 30 and under. No.
What's amazing to me about that also is you talked about being better coached, but you were on pace. So you knew what you needed to do. You knew what your plan was. You had it in your head, what it looked like. And then you stayed and you worked on that plan. You get somebody else that doesn't have as good a plan, or they're not as well coached. Like this kid, he's half your age, probably should smoke you on that run, but he didn't have that plan, or if he did, he didn't work that plan. And so he fell short of where you ended up.
So Carl, this notion of planning, we always race with a plan. Coach and I always race with a plan. I just told you some of my story, but understand, folks, this is not just my story. If you've ever had the proverbial broken foot, have you ripped your quad? Have you fallen on the inside rail, separated your shoulder? Have you ever been in that stairwell just in despair, and you call your coach and said, I can't do this. You're going through a divorce right now. You call your mama, or you drop to your knees. You call on your God. You say, I can't do this. It's too hard. With something that's really important, not just some world record, right? Some little thing, but your story is the same story with different details that matters much more, right? But always race with a plan. I'm going to cut way into the future. This is years later, 2016, and it's at the Olympic trials. And they've invited the 12 fastest over 40 milers in the United States to participate in this exhibition race. This isn't to make the Rio Games. This is the 12 fastest over 40 guys. I'm 50 years old at this point, and I'm one of the 12 fastest. And this is me on the starting line at this Olympic trials, and they did it at Tracktown at the Hayward Field in Eugene, Oregon. The gun goes off, and guess who's in the lead? Because no one wanted to lead. Coach told me this is going to happen. He says, Brad, the gun's going to go off, and we racing down the backstretch of that 1500, and people are going to look up, and they're going to see 22,000 screaming fans in the bleachers, and they're going to say, I don't want to lead this. And if you want to get the American record, the M50 1500, you're going to have to lead this race from about 100 meters on. And then he said, at about 1,000 meters, you get 2, maybe 3 guys past you. You'll pass one of those guys, and you'll end up 3rd, maybe 4th. Well, the gun goes off. Sure enough, around the first turn, everyone just hits the skids, and I ended up at the front. Kept it on pace, 64.5, 64.5, 64.5. At 1,000 meters, 3 guys went past me. I passed one at the end, ended up 3rd in this race. We're at the some of you know the university campus. We're at the Wild Duck the 12 of us having, well, except for one guy had to catch a flight. We're eating dinner together, us Masters guys. And I asked, I said, what was your race plan, guys? And everyone just got silent. And then the guy, this fellow next to me in the dark glasses, his name is Mark Williams. He's a brilliant Masters miler. He says, well, I just figured I'd follow you because you're coached by Hislop. I knew you'd have a plan. And everybody says, yeah, that's my plan too. Like, what?
Yeah.
And everyone was saying, well, you're coached by Hislop. We knew you were gonna come with a plan. And because I went out with a plan, everybody else in that race ran faster. I wasn't there to win the race. There's a 40-year-olds that are way faster than I am, but I beat a lot of guys that I shouldn't have. And I'm the only one that broke a record that day. The rest of them were just there for the experience. There was one guy that broke a record because he's the old guy breaking in the Masters 50 to 54-year-old world, because I had a plan, folks. And once again, this is not about me. What is your plan? What is your plan? Did you plan your race and race your plan? Do you have a daily plan? Do you have a weekly, monthly plan? Do you have a plan for getting better? Okay, once again, this is not about me. And it's not about you either, right? This is your story with my details.
That's it. That is it.
Now this is we've been on this call for 70 minutes. Are we done, or do you have time for another 5-minute story?
I think we can do one more 5-minute story.
Okay, let's do it even less than that.
Hey,
let's do it this way.
You got a pretty decent following, people still watching, so I think another story is warranted.
So I broke something again. Something fell off, and we're going to try and break some more M50 records. I broke my foot, and months later I'm fit again, and I ripped my quad. And months later I'm world record fit, and I took a terrible head injury in a training run. And months later I'm fit again, and I'm running up the stairs, and traumatic injury. I've ripped my toe, break my toe. And months later, I had another wicked head injury. I'm still not right over. I'm 53 years old. I haven't been on the track since 2016 at the Olympic trials. And I step on the track again at the Hayward Field, or excuse me, the same place that I broke that steeplechase world record. This is in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, Nashville.
And the gun goes off, and I don't know if you can see this. No, it's not going to play either. So let's not do that again. Oh, there we go.
A little better.
This is the mile world record, M50 mile world record. Shane Healy is an Olympic 1,500 meter runner from Ireland years ago. He came to break the world record from Ireland.
And you're in front of him.
So what is possible? What is possible? One of the articles is written, and there's been a lot of really nice ones written. Outdoor Magazine has a great article, and the Runner's World did a nice article. The Times of San Diego, the reporter, he titled his article "Brad Barton and His Book of Job," because of all the stuff that fell off just trying to get to this starting line. Again, this is not my story. I have been blessed to have a great coach. And that's part of the GallantFew program. There's mentorship involved. There's support involved. There are people that have been there down the road a month or 2 or 3 years down the road from where you're at right now that can help you get through your rough patch. Can help you to have a plan instead of saying it's easier just to end it all, right? To have a plan rather than just, the home to work thing. To get through the aches and the pains and the broken hearts and the broken bones. Let's go do some things that you've never done before.
Yeah, and I think. Go ahead. Sorry, Brad.
That's it. Go do some things that have never been done before in your life. Go get it done. We can do this.
That's it. And I mean, I think one of the bigger things that you highlighted at the beginning was this shift in mindset. And one thing I want to briefly go on, I think this would kind of be my final thought, is we hear the term hustle harder all the time. Hustle, work more, run faster, just do it more. And if you had gone back to that time when you were running on the track and you just weren't getting it, if you had just kept doing the same thing, hustling harder, just trying to run harder without that introspection with your coach and yourself, you wouldn't have been able to do those things. And it's that team effort. It's that continual evaluation and almost, navigation through. Am I doing the right things? Is this getting me towards my goals? Is there something I could be doing better? Do I need a different mindset? Like you said, your coach said, I'm training you like a collegiate athlete. I need to train you like a 40-plus man. And, having been, I did a 5:03 mile at 32 years old. And that's that's as far as I'm going. And that was mile 3 of let's keep doing this kind of thing. Never ever want to try that again because it was terrible. But I didn't just walk out my front door and say, I'm going to do that. And that's that's a big realization of those two things is you're not going to break that mile record just walking out on the track. It's going to take broken feet. It's going to take pulled muscles. It's going to take reevaluation with your guide, your crew, your coach. It's going to take hard work. And if you go the easy way, it's going to be even harder for you.
Amen.
Kind of wraps up what I interpreted everything that you were saying, and just I fed on it because I love being a competitive person too, and hearing about strategy. I wanted to. This is this is Best Ranger Week, or it should be Best Ranger Week in Fort Benning, and because of COVID and coronavirus, it's not happening. That's only happened one other time, and that was right after September 11th happened. And so that's a big deal. Tons of athletes, just like collegiate, NCAA, professional, are not going to Best Ranger that they've been training months and months and months for. And it's heartbreaking. And I get the privilege to speak to a Best Ranger winner, Master Sergeant Josh Forsager on Thursday. We're going to talk about Best Ranger. We're going to talk about Ironman. We're going to talk about Spartan races. So that's going to be pretty cool. But people like that, and it goes back to they had a plan for their win. And in the last Best Ranger I went to, the team that won did not come out of the gate fast. They were not the first back in from the first couple of rounds. And people are like, what's going on? This team was slated to win. And you see them, they've got a big old smile on their face. They're getting so much rest. And then it clicked on me. They got a plan. They know how to work this competition. And they're not beating their heads up against the wall to try and win it. They figured out how to win it within the parameters of the rules. And sure enough, they did that. I mean, they didn't bend anything. They just knew where they could bob and weave and get extra rest and where they needed to get in first and where it didn't matter. And it was amazing to see how their strategy worked. Because you said it, like they had that grin where like people are whizzing by them and doing their own things and they're in their own mindset. And I think
so this is a metaphor, Bryce, for those that are still with us and those that join us after. What is that? What did the story Bryce just told? What does that mean to you? How does that notion show up in your journey, and that you can run your race smarter? You can do hard things and build your resiliency muscles, because the next hard thing's coming. And if we're built our resiliency muscle, then we can punch through those, working smarter and go do some things that have never been done.
That's it. Man, what a fantastic hour plus time, Carl.
Brad, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on today.
It's been my pleasure. And I just want to say thank you to all of the veterans, those that are active duty, their families. Thank you for serving my family. We pray for you. We do, for keeping my family safe. Thank you for all that you do in your service to us all in our country.
Awesome.
Hey, I heard, I think it was Tony Main, who I think is listening or is on here. And he said the other day, when it comes to thanking a veteran, and I love this piece because I prefer to say thank you. I don't prefer to say thank you for your service. I like to say thank you for my freedom. And in his case, he said what he does now, when he sees a veteran, he says, thank you for keeping my family safe.
Yeah.
So it makes it personal, which is really meaningful to a veteran, because when you say thanks for your service, it's just, sometimes that's a little weird. But when you say, hey, thanks for keeping my family safe, you're like, heck yeah, I kept your family safe. Darn right.
That's it. All about mindset.
Yeah. Well, Bryce, do we have anybody tomorrow? Do you know who's coming on?
I think I think Nick Franz from Frag Out Clothing will be on with us tomorrow.
Awesome.
So it'd be great to hear from him and his story. So that'll be Wednesday, right at the same time.
Same time, same place.
That's it.
Brad, thank you very much. We're going to have you back.
Appreciate you.
All right.
Bryce, Carl, thanks for the invite.
Bye, guys.
Love you guys. Bye.